Great. And now I will share my screen. Everyone should see a BERDO presentation. Seems good. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Diana Vasquez. I'm the BERDO Review Board Manager. So first thing we're going to lead off with is a vote because the BERDO Review Board does not currently have an appointed chair. So I'll lead us in a vote for acting chair. Does anyone want to make a nomination for acting chair?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Lee Matsueda as acting chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that.
Great. I will now lead us in a vote. So how do you vote in favor for the motion to have board member Matsueda serve as acting chair? In favor, oppose, or abstain? And I'll go one by one. So board member Boyd.
Favor.
Board member Jacobs.
Favor.
Board member, board member Lattimore. I think she may not be on the call. Board member Matsueda.
Favor.
Board member Nelson.
In favor.
Board member Palmer Dunning.
In favor.
Great. I will now hand over the meeting to acting chair Matsueda.
Hey, great. Thank you, Diana, and members of the board. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. So I'm calling this public hearing to order at 4:37 p.m. in accordance with the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance regulations adopted pursuant to the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance. Boston City Code Ordinances Section 7-2.2. The BERDO Review Board will hold a virtual public hearing on June 26 to review the following topics in regards to the reduction of greenhouse gases from the building, energy production, and consumption, so as to promote the public health and welfare of Boston residents. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this public meeting online to ensure public access to the deliberations of the BERDO Review Board. The public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on regulation discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. And if you're calling in and you can't use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. And you can send your questions to staff via email at brb@boston.gov. So for the record, I'm Lee Matsueda, acting chair of the board. I'll now conduct a roll call for the board members. Board members, just please say your name in the order that they appear on the slide.
Rashida Boyd.
Lavette Jacobs.
I believe board member Lattimore may not be on the call yet.
Jack Nelson.
Ty Palmer Dunning.
Great, thanks, members of the board. Let's have staff introduce themselves, please.
Hi, Diana Vasquez, Environment Department.
Claudia Diaz Martinez, Environment Department.
Aiden Callan, Environment Department.
Aladdin Zara, Environment Department.
All right, great. Thanks, staff that are helping out our efforts here. Really important that your team is working with us. So yeah, we got 3 or 4 items on our agenda. We're gonna just quickly approve our meeting minutes. We'll do some updates in discussion on BERDO Phase 3 regulations. We'll do some updates and discussion on BERDO reporting and disclosure. And then we will close with some administrative updates. So yeah, let's just go to what's first on the agenda. It's an update and discussion on the BERDO Phase 3 regulations development, including feedback that we received during the informal comment period regarding preliminary proposals on building portfolios and individual compliance schedules.
Sorry,
So-
acting chair. we did a last minute change up. So I think the first item is actually to approve the meeting minutes.
Oh, my bad. I just skipped ahead. I'm sorry. That is completely my mistake. That my fault. Yeah, sorry. So first on the agenda is actually to approve our previous meetings minutes. So for the board members, hope you've had a chance to take a look. Is there a motion to approve our minutes from our June 12th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Levette. Is
No
there a second?
Second.
All right. So I think we're gonna go down the list again and just on the motion to approve our previous meeting minutes from June 12th. How do you vote? We'll go to board member Boyd,
Favor.
board member Jacobs,
In favor.
board member Lattimore, you with us? Okay, not yet. I am in favor. And board member Nelson,
In favor?
thank you. Board member Palmer Dunning.
In favor.
Great. All right, thanks for that catch, Diana. We will now get to what I was saying before for our second item. It's an update and discussion on the BERDO Phase 3 regulation development, including feedback and a receipt from the during the formal informal comment period regarding preliminary proposals on building portfolios and individual compliance schedules. Diana, please take it over.
Sure thing. I'm going to start with the review board update. So we have 6 members seated. Almost everyone here is in attendance, with the exception of board member Lattimore. So these are the folks who have been sworn in. We have 1 member who is passed by city council, but yet to be sworn in, which is Stephen Ellis. And we have 2 members pending a city council vote. One update is Matt O'Malley, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Vicinity Energy, had a hearing on June 16th. And I think the latest I've heard is that there may be a vote on his nomination this week by City Council. So we may very well soon have a complete board, hopefully, within the next week or so. And this is just a review of the timeline I mentioned last time in our June 12th meeting. So our goal is still to have a little bit more beefed up, I guess, draft regulations for the Air Pollution Control Commission for their August meeting, recognizing that there will be open public comment periods, with the ultimate goal to have finalized regulations by the end of this calendar year. And then you can see there's some other things we have in the works as well. And then as another reminder, we're in what we're calling phase 3 of regulations. And these are the topics we hope to address in phase 3. So building portfolios, individual compliance schedules, hardship compliance plans, equitable emissions investment fund, fines and enforcement, and then compliance with emission standards. And just an update on what's been done. So phase 3 launched in March. We've had 2 public technical working sessions, specifically on building portfolios and individual compliance schedules. And if you're interested, you can find the slide decks and notes for those on boston.gov website. We've had 5 community advisory group meetings, and we've had 2 focus group meetings regarding hardship compliance plans, one with affordable housing and one with Longwood hospitals. And we still have some more community summer meetings and focus groups that we have planned for the summer, and I'm sure more meetings will come up. And I'll hand it off to Claudia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. As it was mentioned before, you may remember from our past review board meeting that we had an informal public comment period on regulations related to building portfolios and individual compliance schedules. That informal comment period ended June 16th, and we are currently in the process of reviewing those comment letters and making revisions to the draft regulations. So today I'm going to present a summary of those comments that we'd received from the public during this period. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm first going to start with some general comments that we got for both building portfolios and individual compliance schedules. And again, this is a very summarized version of the comments, and we will respond to each of the comment letters we received in detail through the APCC process as well, and that's coming up. So in summary, we heard comments on requests to define a specific timeline for the application process. So how long it would take for a decision to be made on building portfolios and individual compliance schedules once an application is submitted to the review board. We also heard a request to define an appeal process. This would mean a process through which building owners could appeal the decision of the review board. So there's requests to define a process for that. There were also general comments seeking more clarity on the criteria that the review board will use to approve with conditions, or denied building portfolio or individual compliance schedule. So just more details on the decision-making criteria for the board. And finally, on both topics, we also had comments seeking more clarity, on the type of conditions that the review board may set for building portfolios and individual compliance schedules. As you may remember, the review board has the ability to set conditions once they approve a portfolio or individual compliance schedules. So people are curious on what are the types of conditions that the review board will be able to set. Next slide, please. We also got more specific comments related to building portfolios. For example, we got comments seeking more clarity on the eligibility criteria for building portfolios, meaning who is able to apply for building portfolios in the first place. More specifically, there's just some comments related to the clarity of the definition of same owner. You may remember that building portfolios can be formed with buildings that either share the same owner or that are part of the same institutional master plan. So there's just requests for more clarity on what counts as same owner. Similarly, there's questions on clarity and more details on whether and how building portfolios can be formed based on institutional master plans. So we're working on revising the language to make sure that is as clear as possible. There were also requests seeking more clarity on the requirements of the emission standard compliance plans. You may remember from our last meeting that the regulations proposals included 3 different pathways for building portfolio applications. Pathway 2 and 3 could include buildings that have either high emissions or that are residential buildings, and those applications would require the submission of an emission standard compliance plan 2 years after the building portfolio is approved. So there's questions on how detailed or deep these emission standard compliance plans will need to be. And finally, there's also requests for more clarity on the requirements of environmental justice reporting criteria. Similar for pathway 2 and 3, the review board will have the power to set reporting criteria related to environmental justice. So there's requests for more details on that. Next slide, please. In the case of individual compliance schedules, we also got some comments that are specific to this topic. One of the general comments that we got is seeking flexibility for buildings that may not have complete historical data to establish a baseline year. You may remember that individual compliance schedules allow building owners to establish an alternative emissions reduction timeline that is based on a baseline year. That baseline year can be anywhere from 2005 to the first year of BERDO reporting. So there's concerns that not all building owners will have access to sufficient historical data to build a complete baseline year. And there's also specific concerns for the availability of emissions factors from district energy systems retroactively. So from these years before BERDO was passed as an ordinance. Similarly, on the topic of data, there's requests for more clarity on the third-party verification requirements for historical data, what the process will be and what it will entail. You may also remember that our proposals included, as part of the application for an individual compliance schedules, to include a description of emissions reduction efforts that have happened either in the building or the building portfolio in the past to the date of application. So there's also a request for more clarity on the level of detail that would be required as part of the application. And finally, we also heard concern on the potential for misusing these flexibility mechanisms and perverse incentives in combining individual compliance schedules and hardship compliance plans. You may remember that hardship compliance plans are also a phase 3 topic that we will be covering very soon. So we will continue to address this issue as well as we continue with the phase 3 process. Next slide, please. There were also specific concerns on building portfolios applying for individual compliance schedules and what the specifics of that process would be. For example, we had comments seeking more clarity on whether and how owners will be able to apply for building portfolios and individual compliance schedules at the same time. And we heard some general support to streamline this process and allow building owners to submit these applications at the same time. They're similar to the comment on individual compliance schedules for individual buildings. There's also concern on the ability of building portfolios to apply for individual compliance schedules if there's no historical data for all buildings in the portfolio for the same baseline year. So again, concerns with data availability. And finally, there's comments seeking more clarity on whether and how building portfolios will still need to provide a blended emission standards if they are applying for an individual compliance schedule. Next slide, please. And finally, we also have some additional topics that are not inherently only part of building portfolios or individual compliance schedules that we wanted to highlight. We got some requests to add tenants protections, affordable housing measures, and anti-gentrification measures throughout the regulations for BERDO, and not only as conditions for flexibility mechanisms like building portfolios and individual compliance schedules, and not only as a part of the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund. We also heard requests to create regulations related to workforce development and clarifying how BERDO compliant efforts could serve as a way to advance economic opportunity for the most marginalized. These topics are, of course, a great priority for the City of Boston and the Environment Department, and we're currently looking at all legal structures and avenues to address these topics through the phase 3 regulations and to get a sense of what other topics could be addressed through other mechanisms in the city. Oh, no worries. And finally, we also heard requests for the city to work with community organizations to create and conduct community engagement to bring awareness on BERDO and involve tenants, residents, and other stakeholders in this discussion related to BERDO regulations and BERDO more broadly. And as we have been mentioning in past APCC meetings and the past review board meetings, we're currently working with members of our community advisory group to design and plan a community engagement process for this summer. And we'll hopefully have more updates for you all very soon. And I think that should be all from my side, and I will pass it back to Diana.
Yes, sorry about that, Claudia. I didn't mean to take away the
It's
slide
okay.
deck. And then I just want to take a quick second to highlight some of these sections because these these different topics will really affect review board members' timelines and kind of really your actions as board members. So, you know, application timelines, really defining for building portfolios and individual compliance schedules when the review board should respond by, keeping in mind that September 1st of each year would be the deadline to submit applications so that the decisions are reflected for the following calendar year. Application evaluation criteria, so defining relevant criteria to evaluate and decide when an application for a building portfolio or individual compliance schedule should be approved, denied, or approved with conditions. And then potential standard conditions, recognizing there's always going to be special circumstances, but thinking about what are some default or standard conditions that could be set for the approval of building portfolio and individual compliance schedule. And of course, you don't have to have these answers right now, but just highlighting these because these will really impact board members' time and commitment. And so we really invite your thoughts here. And if you have thoughts that come up after this meeting, you know, you can email me or Claudia directly because we definitely want to make sure y'all feel included in these decisions as well.
And just to clarify that our next iteration of regulations on these topics will include more specifics on all of these. So definitely welcome your input as we're working on creating that language and revising past language as well.
Totally.
Okay. Thanks so much, Diana and Claudia, for the updates and some key things for us to be thinking about going forward. I think we're going to go to the phase where part of the meat of this agenda where we're going to listen and hear from different board members, and then after that we will open it up to public comment as well. So I'm just going to call on each board member, and you obviously, if you have anything you'd like to add or comment or questions you have, please submit them, and if not, you're welcome to obviously pass. So I'll start with you, board member Boyd.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Board member Jacobs. You're on mute, Levette.
Sorry about that. The requests that we had heard when you were reading them off earlier, when are we gonna go about I guess getting into detail about them? Because I know I heard something about, somebody mentioned something about passing maybe some type of gentrification guideline. I'm interested in that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sure, I can take that. So we receive all of these comments letters, and we as the BERDO team will provide a response to each of the comments in detail through the APCC process. So we will publish a public response to each of these comments. We are certainly able to share those more specific comments and letters and responses to all of you. The tentative goal right now is to respond to all of these comments and revise the regulations language by the next APCC meeting, which is July 19. So hopefully by the next review board meeting, we can talk more about how to respond to these comments and more specifics on that. I don't know if that responds to the question. Yeah.
No, that sounds great. That answered my question perfectly. Thank you.
Great. I don't think board member Lattimore, have you joined us? I don't think so. Okay. We'll keep rolling. I guess I'm next on the list. Yeah, I mean, I think it's I'm really actually impressed with the set of feedback and questions and comments here. And you know, Levette, similar to you, I am really interested in those 3 additional topics. And really interested, you know, I think a lot of our community partners work very closely on affordable housing and renter protection and tenant rights issues. And so really hoping that there's something we can do around that item. You mentioned, Levette. You know, the workforce issue also is really important. We've talked about this creating as many as, I thought the number was around 500 jobs. I don't remember exactly how we calculate that. And just feels like a really important thing to be thinking about in the context of, making sure Boston resident, I know we have the Boston Jobs Ordinance thing in place, but just want to make sure we're very clear about how this ties to work opportunities for work for our residents and our communities. And then the last one, I think you mentioned it, but feels really important around the role of local community organizations. I know we have the Community Advisory Group, I believe it's what it's called, that has been really meeting regularly. I really appreciate their efforts. And I know we're in conversation with them about figuring out what their role is and with these community meetings that are happening hopefully this summer. And so, want to figure out how to make sure we have a process that really builds on the expertise and knowledge and relationships of those community organizations. So I definitely support that. And if there's anything that I know I can be doing to help out, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, yeah, a lot of the same questions I had about this whole process. The evaluation criteria in particular is something I have a lot of questions about and want to dig into. So look forward to that. I will keep going. Board Member Nelson.
So Claudia, what is your process within your group to draft responses to this? How do you go about doing that?
You mean within the environment department as my group? Yes. That's a great question. And I can send examples from what we have done in past phases is going to be very similar. So basically, we take all of the comment letters, we translate all of those into a table that is organized by topic. So for example, we would have all comments related to the application process for building portfolios in one place, and we respond to each and every one of those comments. We clarified if we made any changes to the language based on the comments, or explain why we could or could not make changes based on the comments, and also we'll provide a new draft language. And usually that's part of the Air Pollution Control Commission process. So we will present a summarized version of all of the comments again, and then of all responses to the Air Pollution Control Commission at a public hearing. And all of those materials, letters, responses, slides are also always public in the BERDO website.
And we'll review that language on July 19th or just prior to that? Is that how that would work?
Do you mean the review board?
Yes, this board, BERDO review board.
Yes, I think Diana will speak to that later, but I do think we have time for another review board meeting prior to that July 19 hearing, so we can go through what the updates that we have by that time at said meeting.
And if I could add briefly, this is Aladdin Joroff speaking from the city. Just a reminder that we would welcome your feedback, through email or phone calls before then too, as we're working through this, because our process does include a lot of folks sitting down and thinking about all the comments from, an administrative, a technical perspective, the equity perspective, the legal perspective, to understand, what's within our capacity to do, the implications. So we welcome thoughts on how to address some of these issues. Thank you.
Yes, and I will add that this was only an informal public comment period, so we will also have more opportunities, even when we present revised language based on these comments, to revise again through the formal public comment period opened by the Air Pollution Control Commission. So there's certainly still more time to talk about all of these regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Jack. Board Member Palmer Dunning.
Great, thank you. I think, this is a great list of questions and comments. Similar with Board Member Matsueda and Board Member Jacobs, I do kind of share an interest around the questions and concerns around the equity investment fund, specifically how we'll be crafting that. We'll be kind of creating a pipeline of projects to apply for it, or we'll be creating an RFP process for stakeholders to respond to access the funding. So yeah, definitely interested in exploring how best to implement regulations around that. And then I also have a question. If possible, could you go into a little bit more detail about the concern around the misuse and combination of individual compliance schedules and hardship plans? It's okay if you don't have that question or comment in front of you, but I was kind of to get more context around what this person what this person was concerned about in terms of the combination of those two.
Sure, that was part of a public comment letter by a group of community based organizations, and I don't want to speak for them on like what are all of the nuances of their concerns, but at least at a general level, the concern is like how these flexibility mechanisms can be combined, and if that can result on not advancing the goals of BERDO at a high level. But if we will share all of these public comment letters in more detail as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I will open it. Any other last comments or questions from members of the board? And then members of the public, again, thank you for joining us. We will get to you just after this. But I'll just ask one more time. Any members of the board have any final questions or comments before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right, then. So we turn to you, members of the public. We're going to now open it up to public comment. And so as a reminder to members of the public to provide public comment, you can raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via Zoom meeting platform. Looks like the question's already in. If you're calling in and can't use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. You can also send your questions to staff via email at brb@boston.gov. We do want to just keep things moving, so we're going to limit our questions to 3 minutes to make sure we have time for everyone. And we're going to also make sure to ask members of the public, I don't think we did this last meeting, to introduce yourself and the neighborhood and your neighborhood. So we're going to give you all a chance now to provide comment and questions, and we will go from there. So I already see one question in the chat. I can start by just reading that, unless Deanna, do you want to come off or come on to the meeting here and just read your question aloud?
Sure. So I'm Deanna. I live in Lynn, Massachusetts, but I work for Train Technologies out of Wilmington. So I was looking at the data collected for some of the buildings, and I was just wondering if there are any plans to standardize this process of inputting their values for their buildings so that it can be more easily parsed and analyzed.
Thanks for that question, Deanna. Is someone prepared to kind of help speak to that a little? Claudia, or maybe?
Just to confirm, with this, you mean the general reporting of BERDO?
Yes. So like they report their building type and their intensity and all of that information, the addresses. A lot of them are in different formats.
Got it. I don't know if Aiden, who's in the meeting, has any response to that.
Yeah, my apologies. I'd have to ask for you to repeat the question one more time.
No problem. So I was wondering if there are plans to standardize the inputting of data that the buildings put in. So, you know, street addresses, building type, usage, intensity, that kind of stuff, so that it can be more easily parsed and analyzed. Yeah, so
on the, I suppose there are a few different ways to come at this. So we try to standardize the information that we collect as much as possible in terms of the data reported through the BERDO supplemental reporting form and Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And then as I'll get into shortly, that data is kind of standardized and made consistent through our data disclosure process. But if there are specific areas that you've noticed, whether it be street addresses, how certain units are reported, we'd certainly want to take a look at that, and maybe we can dive into very specifics and how we can better standardize this information and just make it clear. We do sort of speak a language here, and we want to make sure that when we say gross floor area versus living area, it's clear what that difference is, and, limit that inconsistency as much as possible. But yeah, I think for something like that, I think we might have to take it on a case by case basis, just based on how many different sources we're pulling from, if that makes sense. But I'd be more than happy to have a follow-up call, Deanna, and dig into this further.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Aiden. Thanks, Deanna, for that. Other members of the public that would like to just make any comments, ask any questions, we would really welcome it. I know many of you have already submitted. Andy, I see your chat, your post in the chat. Do you want to go ahead and read to us what you wrote in there, please?
Sure. I just wanted to make the group aware of a new UCLA brief that's a Pritzker brief. It's written by UCLA, and it was for the city of Los Angeles, and it was just released in June 2023. So just a couple of weeks ago. And this brief is really specifically looking at how do you equitably decarbonize buildings. And there are a number of recommendations in it that I think would be helpful for the community advisory group to be aware of, and for this board to be aware of. And so I've just given you one example, as well as a link to that report.
That's great. Thank you, Andy, for sharing the resource. Maybe, I'm not sure if our team has already seen some of this, but I know I haven't, and really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And we invite anyone to share resources that they think would be relevant to the regulations to my email as well, or Diana, or through the chat as well.
Great. Other members of the public, please don't be shy. We would love to hear from you. Okay. We will, continue to have public comment period after the different agenda items we go through. So obviously interact with us in the chat, and if there is nothing else, I think we're going to move on to our third item. Any last takers? Oh, Lindsay, I see your comment here. Would you like to go ahead and read that for us?
Yeah, sure. My name's Lindsay Lawson. I live in Beacon Hill, and I wanted to ask if the BERDO data could also add reporting on when the building was last renovated, in addition to when it was built. I think that could be helpful in contextualizing the UIs. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the comment. This is Aladdin. If you have additional thoughts that you want to share with us now or later on kind of what level of renovation, or if you had specific types of projects in mind, that'd be great to understand.
Okay, I will think about that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. All right, so I think we're gonna move to this next section. And this is going to be an update on the BERDO reporting and disclosure. And I'm going to pass it, I think, to you, Aiden, right?
Sorry, actually, one quick, wanted to cover quickly the next steps for regulations.
Oh, sure, please. Sorry about that.
And then pass it to Aiden. No, that's okay. So here are some of proposed next steps. So July 10th is our next tentative scheduled meeting for the review board, or this is what we have our hold for. July 19 is when the Air Pollution Control Commission has their July hearing. And then we have a July 24th hold also for the BERDO review board meeting. I think it was board member Nelson who asked if we would be able to see the kind of the full comments and responses before the APCC hearing. So we could do that on our July 10th BERDO review board meeting ahead of the APCC hearing, and then also have a meeting after the APCC hearing. Of course, this is also up to the discretion of the board. If the board prefers just having one meeting in July, we can do that as well. So just wanted to lay that out for folks. And then the August APCC hearing is August 16th. So that's kind of what the schedule looks like for the next couple of months. And then overall the goals. So for the summer, continue engagement with the community advisory board or group, technical working session, focus groups, and general community engagement. August, present the final proposals, or sorry, not final, present the first proposals for all of the remaining phase 3 topics, with the goal of having finalized APCC voting in December.
Great.
And now it's aided.
Great, thanks for that, Diana. Yeah.
Okay, thanks all. You can go on to the next slide. Okay, so just a few quick updates here. Just noting again that 2023 reporting on 2022 calendar year data was due on May 15th. So we were able to grant extensions for buildings that are reporting to BERDO for the very first time this year. It's a more cumbersome process to gather building characteristics, gather your data for the first time from utilities, and have to work with a third-party verifier during that first year. So I want to give folks additional time there, and then gave extensions to buildings that requested more time due to extenuating circumstances. That might be issues getting data from the utilities in a timely manner. They're waiting on information from the BERDO team. They sent the data to a third-party verifier, but it's out of their hands now. So really want to work with people to just get them across the finish line, but do want to note for folks that have not put in an extension request, that reporting was due on May 15th. And 2022 reporting on 2021 data is well past due at this time. So properties that have not been third-party verified are not considered in compliance with 2022 reporting, and that 2021 data has been posted to Analyze Boston. Actually, I don't have a link to Analyze Boston in this slide deck, but I'll be sure to add that for folks to be able to access after this call. And next slide, please. All right, so I just want to give high-level update on reporting this year. Apologies for the small font, but really just wanted to note that there are about 2,300 buildings that have submitted their 2022 data. Of those that have not yet submitted yet, about 1,300, 1,400 buildings are engaged within the reporting process this year. They've requested further extensions. And our focus really is going to turn to getting them across the finish line, but to reach out to building owners that have not yet requested an extension. And we're going to be notifying them that 2022 data reporting, 2023 BERDO reporting year is past due. So next slide, please. Okay, so 2021 BERDO disclosure. So these values were taken directly from the BERDO disclosure, which is again available on the Analyze Boston website. So right now that reported data is static within that disclosure spreadsheet, but I do want to note that we will be automatically updating that disclosure as more submissions come through. We know a lot of folks are still working to get across the finish line. They're getting a late start. They didn't realize that they had a few other buildings that were on the covered buildings list. So we know that folks are still trying to get across. So we do want to make sure that we're updating that disclosed data periodically. With that, there will be an interactive disclosure map to show the entire city, and so folks can really visualize where these compliant and non-compliant properties really are. So, I think there are maybe a lot to unpack here. I did want to keep it, pretty high level. Happy to answer any questions on this. But, I do want to note that, the properties that are non-compliant right now are mostly properties with a smaller square footage. So if we were to look at, compliance with disclosure on just a square footage basis, which is again more aligned with emissions, we'd see a much higher compliance rate. This is really just looking at the building by building compliance. And I would note too that this is, based on the first year of what we call BERDO 2.0. So there was a lot that we had thrown at folks that they were having to do for the first time. Everyone had to verify their data for the first time, bring in a third party. Folks had to report on the building level as opposed to the property level. And then we had this whole new wave of smaller buildings that were just introduced to BERDO for the first time, that again had to kind of figure things out. And so I completely understand that, that, this is new for a lot of folks, but yeah, happy to answer any questions on this. And that's all I have.
All right, great. Thanks so much for that, Aiden. And let's do our round of questions and comments from the board, and then we can go into our public comments. So I'm gonna mix it up. I feel like we always go through the same order, so I'm just gonna go crazy here. Kai, I'm gonna start with you, board member Palmer Dunning. I'm gonna go in reverse order. Any questions or comments you'd like to add?
Great, thanks for putting me on the spot. Yeah, thanks, Aiden, for sharing this data. This is really interesting. I think it's good that in terms of square footage, we are seeing the larger buildings complying with the ordinance versus the smaller ones. But it is still kind of alarming that for the 2021 data, there's a large portion of the buildings that haven't been claimed, and then for 2023, buildings that haven't submitted without exception. Is there any understanding of the building types that are in compliance and out of compliance?
Yeah, so just to speak at a kind of a very high level, those that are out of compliance are mostly smaller buildings that have had to report for the very first time in 2021. They are typically smaller as a result of that, and are as a result of being smaller too, might not have that as much bandwidth as the larger properties do to sort of have somebody on staff to put to BERDO reporting, for example. Building types, we're seeing a lot of condo properties, condo associations, and as they sort of make up a lot of those newer properties between 15 units and 35 units, 20,000 square feet and 35,000 square feet. And again, I think once we release that map, I think it'll be pretty telling. But as we sort of branch out from downtown and get to the smaller buildings in the more suburban areas, we're seeing a lower compliance rate there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for getting us rolling there, Kai. Board member Nelson.
I have no questions.
Thanks. I had a similar question to board member Palmer Dunning. I think I'll pass it on. Board member Lattimore, I don't think you're with us, correct? Okay. Board member Jacobs.
No questions at the moment.
And board member Boyd.
It's not so much a question, but I just want everyone to keep in mind that there is a shortage of third-party verifiers, because I'm one of them, kind of. So it's new, it's in demand, and it's a lot of work that has to be covered. So I'm pretty sure that's like the pie said, the chart said, that's one of the reasons, It has to be manually done and it has to be verified, and it's not a lot of us. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Board Member Boyd, for that comment. Any other just comments or questions from the board? I mean, it does make me wonder, to your point, Board Member Boyd, do we have a sense of how many third-party verifiers there are?
There's not a lot. I can do a little more research and send you something, because it's new, just like we keep on saying, it's new. Even the HERS rating thing, it used to be just in single families to a certain demographic of people. And now it's mandatory that everyone is granted this. So, or have the opportunity to have it. So it just came in like, whew, but it's not a lot of, like, there's a lot of projects. There's a lot of projects, and this is just bringing more, which is a good thing. But it's really a manual thing. It's a data collecting thing. It's a process where people, you have to give them time to make the change. So it will get done, but I just want everyone to keep in mind that this isn't something that's been around. It's new. A lot of people aren't aware of it, and people have to learn it. You know, I'm still learning. You know.
Thanks.
That's it.
Any other just comments or questions from the board before we move on to our public comments?
I just wanted to
Claudia?
add that, sorry, just for the information of the board and the public, as part of the BERDO How to Report Guide, there is a link to a list of third-party verifiers that responded to a request for information. So there is a list there that I can share, but it's not exhaustive of all third-party verifiers that may exist in the city. So I'll share that in the chat for your information.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. And yeah, that is just a request for information. We're sort of passing along information that's been submitted to us. So, we don't sort of endorse or recommend anyone specifically on that list. We're just sort of having a resource available for folks to make their services known, and for folks that really don't know anyone with the qualifications needed to be a third-party verifier. We can at least point them in that direction. Yeah.
Great. All right. If there is nothing else, we're going to open it to public comment. I know there's a question and a comment already in the chat that for those who entered that, I'll give you the opportunity to just say it aloud if you'd like. But I'll go through the statement again, which is just as a reminder, members of the public, to provide public comment, you can raise your hand, type in the chat, or in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and can't use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Send your questions to staff via brb@boston.gov. And again, we're going to try to keep it to 3 minutes to make sure we just keep things moving. So as before, please introduce yourself, your name, and your neighborhood. So let's go to it. I saw your question, Wheezy. I know it got answered, but would you just like to say it aloud, and then we can make sure we speak to it?
Thank you, Wheezy Waldstein, Action for Equity. Thank you, Chairman Matsueda, Acting Chairman Matsueda. I wanted to make sure I understood the chart, whether it was numbers of buildings or square footage. It might be, and it was answered that it's numbers of buildings, but since building sizes are so wildly different from each other, there's a process where it's useful to know how many buildings, in each category. But would it be difficult to simply convert this into the footage in each category and then sort of see how far the city's gotten? So that would be my only other question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's something that we can work to attempt to pull for the next review board meeting. It should be should be achievable, but I will say that sort of this compliance rate is looking at building by building, and so at the city we do have square footage information about these properties that haven't been reported, because those that haven't been reported we don't have square footage for yet, but we only have it at the parcel level and not building by building. So if there are multiple buildings, let's say 5, 6 buildings within a single parcel, we don't have that level of granularity, but we should still be able to pull that that parcel level square footage and add that in. So I think that should be doable. And I really think that based on the fact that there are a lot of smaller properties that are non-compliant, the numbers would look a lot better. And I agree, more in line with the compliance of the overall emissions within these large buildings.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question and point there. We appreciate that. And then David, I did see your comment also in the chat. Would you like to say that aloud? I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, this is David Hyman at Jamaica Plain Co-Housing. And I heard in the middle of the discussion talking about some properties don't have a large staff to respond. So I simply want to point out some properties, especially small ones like us, have no staff to respond. It may be a resident, maybe 2 residents, and these residents are not landlords. So I have to keep that in mind.
Of course. Thanks, David. I see your hand up, board member Palmer Dunning. Is it you want to make a comment on this? And then I do want to make sure we give time to our public members.
Oh yeah, I'm just raising my hand. I do want to have a question, but I'll defer to the public for now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, David, really great point though. It's helpful to hear that. I think many of us completely understand that and want to make sure we're working with you and other smaller buildings to make sure the whole process is clear, that you'll have access you need to the resources, and that this is just that we can be super clear about what's needed.
And this is Aladdin. I would just add, we encourage folks to use the city resources too as assistance working through the process.
So other members of the public, we would really welcome you to bring your voice into the space. You can also write in the chat, but any questions or other comments you have in particular.
Chair, I see Stephen Ellis put a question above Wheezy.
Oh, sorry, Stephen, I missed that. Stephen, would you like to read that?
Oh, he put in the chat. Sorry, having issues with my mic.
No worries. Well, if it's okay, we'll read it for you then, Stephen. So Stephen Ellis, can you explain state and federal ? Are they in compliance or not, or exempt?
Yeah, great question, Stephen. So we've sort of separated them into their own category because they have not yet reported any data. I would note that we're engaged with these properties, and they are starting to work to kind of gather some data for BERDO, but at this time, their coverage under BERDO is still unconfirmed, as they have their own state and federal carbon emissions targets that they are subject to. So as we continue to sort of work out their coverage under BERDO, we're just making sure that they're at the very least reporting their data while we further confirm. But I did want to separate that out while there is that uncertainty.
Great. Any other members of the public that would like to offer a question or comment? And then we will come back to you, Board Member Palmer Dunning.
Chair, we do have a question from Eve, I believe. Sorry, Eve, if I mispronounced. I don't know if they wanted to ask their question. Off mute.
Thank you. Aladdin actually is gonna respond to me via email. She doesn't have the information. It was just about the other working groups. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
All right. How about this? Board members, members of the public, you can still raise your hand, offer comment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to board member Palmer Dunning, and then we can come back to other members of the public, if that's all right.
Great, thank you. It's more of a comment to David's question earlier. In terms of smaller properties, not necessarily having the staff or resources in reporting. Often smaller towns, small cities and towns and rural areas that don't have the staff or capacity for sustainability directors use kind of a shared sustainability director across multiple municipalities, and this might be something to consider to help the smaller properties that don't have the capacity to have an in-house person reporting, to seek resources or have somebody to share across multiple properties to help them report their properties for BERDO.
It's an interesting idea. Great, thanks, Board member Palmer Dunning. Any other members of the public want to jump in on this exciting conversation? All right. Well, Aidan, thank you again. I know the work on this will continue, but much appreciated. Thanks everyone for your comments and questions. I think we are moving on. If I'm right, Diana, help me out if I'm wrong, but I think we're moving on to the fourth item on our agenda. And I think we're going to hear from you, Diana, about some of our administrative updates.
Yeah, so just an administrative update that our next hold for BERDO Review Board meeting is July 10th. So, and we have another meeting scheduled 2 weeks after, so July 24th. This is again up to the discretion of the board. If you would like to just have one meeting in July, obviously, feel free to email me and let me know, because we do need quorum for our meetings. But just wanted to flag those 2 days, and they're before the Air Pollution Control Commission hearing and after the Air Pollution Control Commission hearing. And that's it for administrative updates.
Great. Yeah, I think that's important, Diana. Like, I know I would be available for the 2 meetings, but I think other board members should reach out to Diana and indicate if you are or are not available for, is it the July 10th and July 24th meetings?
Correct.
We currently have a hold on our calendars for those dates. And I think if we are 6, then our quorum is 4, is that correct? And then
Correct.
so at least 4 of us would need to be available for those meetings. If we get to a 7th member, but before then, which is I guess possible, I assume we go up to, right, maybe we stay at 4. So yeah, please, I would ask all the board members, you can do it now, you can do it, maybe I would even encourage you to do it now, just to let Diana know if the 10th and the 24th are going to work for you. And then obviously for the members of the public, I think we've been trying to make sure that there are notices about these meetings at least 10 days in advance. So tentatively, our next one should be the 10th. It seems to make sense to hold at least one then in advance of the APCC meeting, right? As Jack had sort of asked about. So that seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Yes, and board members, please feel free to let me know if there's any agenda items that you would like covered.
Great. All right, so we kind of blew through our agenda pretty quickly, which is great. But again, I really appreciate obviously the board members, but also the members of the public. We've had really good, robust turnout. I think it was like 50 last meeting, maybe 35 this meeting. So really appreciate you all being involved, participating, watching us, and learning about this, and then also helping us out, because there's a lot to do around this phase 3 work going forward. I think if board members, I think we're good with our agenda. So I think the last part to move to is just to ask if there is a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Favor, motion to adjourn. Sorry, I'm pleased to go on first. I'm sorry.
It's all cool. It's all good. So that was a motion by Levette, I believe, board member Jacobs. Can we make that a second for you, board member Boyd?
Yes, I second that.
Okay, great. And I guess we need to go down the list again and just do the, are you in favor, opposed, or abstain? Board member Boyd,
I'm in favor.
board member Jacobs.
In favor.
I am in favor, board member Nelson,
In favor.
and board member Palmer Dunning.
In favor.
All right. So we are officially, the motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 5:41 p.m. Thanks, everyone. We'll make sure, notes are up from our last meeting. And y'all have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Be safe.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.